Alright, everybody, we should be live now. Welcome to our weekly show for the week of February 16th, 2020. We once again have another discussion about game design and the game industry lined up. I am Josh Spicer, and joining me is indie game developer Shark, who's currently working on Project Triad.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be back for more than one reason. I've had a heck of a week. Not very much progress has been made on the game side in this week, but working on things, getting programmers lined up. Hopefully, maybe we got several applicants, and it's been really a hectic week. I've had lots of applications kind of put in, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. And lots of other things in life that have been driving me absolutely nuts. It's distracted from that.
Yeah. And for me, it's been another crazy week of calling around the libraries, getting set up for presentations, and I'm hoping to have book number 3 signed in the next week or so. And then that adds another little thing to my table for this year.
Okay, gotta get all the things all at once, like me right now.
Yeah. Nothing can happen, gradually. It's got to be, 15 presentations, calls, books, videos, writing, all that.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to all happen at once. If you're not overwhelmed, you ain't doing it right.
Yep, there you go.
And let me tell you, I'm overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. But we have some really great topics for this week. We're going to be talking about kind of the use of physics-guided or physics-oriented gameplay, and then later, what it means to choose the right peripheral to build your game around. But first, has there been any news this week that stands out?
I have not been up on the news this week.
Yeah, me neither. I've been trying to avoid any kind of drama and things like that.
I have too, but it finds me.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. It looks like Quantic Dream, the makers of all those very narrative-focused games, will self-publish going forward. Let's see. Sony is
whatchamacallit, trying to self-publish too. The one that I think they made Bayonetta, if I remember
right. Platinum Games.
Yeah, Platinum.
Yeah, I think we talked about them last week regarding, was it Mighty 100? I think that's what it was called.
You mean the Wonderful 101?
Yeah, that one. Maybe confusing the Japanese developers there. Or just create a new game.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sony is supposedly having trouble figuring out the pricing for the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, what's the most expensive they can get away with, basically?
True. Let's see. They were thinking about having the price around $470. Because it looks like, according to their results, it's going to cost $450 to manufacture each console.
Well, then it sounds like they're cheaping up, because normally they take a loss on their consoles.
Mm-hmm. They did that
every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sounds like either they limited the hardware that's in there to cheap out on it, or they just want to make more money. One way or the other.
Yep. And it's going to be tough to figure out just how much they're going to be selling for. Do you know Microsoft's going to be paying attention with the Xbox? What's it called again? Is it called Xbox One or One Xbox?
I can't remember. It's something Xbox One X or something. I think it's basically triple Xbox or something.
I don't think it's called Triple X. That may get them in trouble.
Well, I think it is when you abbreviate it. I think it is literally that.
Oh, good. Xbox Tony Hawk. Yep. And with the whole console manufacturing, I mean, this is going to probably be a very big console generation. The PlayStation 4 and Xbox have been around for a very long time, or at least, long by modern standards. And we've been talking about, what is the limit in terms of how far we can push console technology. And I don't know, do you think, now really thinking far ahead, do you think we'll see a console generation after this next one?
I don't know. It really depends on how this one goes, but you know, Xbox says they're not going to have another generation, but they're speaking weirdly, kind of thing. They're trying to combine basically their PC marketplace as well as their Xbox marketplace into one, and then just calling it one generation. But that said, there would probably be more consoles potentially if there's a need for them down the road that will run kind of the same operating compatibility system, so that they would be backwards compatible kind of thing. And it would be like the Xbox. What was it? The Xbox One S was the same as the other Xbox.
Just a little
One.
bit more powerful.
Yeah, just more powerful kind of thing. I suspect they will probably do several more like that and keep them all compatible, keep all their games compatible, so they can build up a massive library kind of thing between their PC storefront and their two and their consoles kind of thing. And that's what I would have to guess. If there was, of course, if they moved enough people over to the PC, they'd probably dump the Xbox kind of thing. But I don't know if they'll be able to do that. So if they can't, they'll probably release something like that, and maybe even a few like that, depending on how long it goes, kind of thing. Sony, on the other hand, I think they'll definitely keep on releasing consoles until brand new ones, until they run into a point where they're no longer profitable.
Yeah, and of course, Nintendo is just Nintendo. Like, we have no idea what they're planning.
Well, Nintendo's still going to make consoles and everything, and they're going to be, just keep on investing into different and weird stuff and whatnot for a while. They'll probably be going long after Sony and shuts down, and long after Xbox is just now a PC platform kind of thing, and it's just and Nintendo's the last console standing kind of thing. But who knows if it'll actually be a console by that point? It's kind of not now. I mean, with the Switch, because that Switch is kind of a console, kind of a handheld, but not technically either. So and they will probably continue down that path of being kind of a little bit of both kind of thing. So who knows with them, but they will be continuing to make their own proprietary hardware, because if they didn't, Nintendo would be Nintendo.
Yep, pretty much. And to Ryu's point, that means I have to prove I'm getting good in public then. Isn't that what I do every night on stream, though? The only difference is that people can actually throw stuff at me instead of just throw insults.
We need, all right, I tell you what. I'm going to create a popcorn dispenser that just has this, it loads like one piece of kernel into a barrel kind of thing, shoots compressed air, and it'll hit you in the back of the head, and then it'll do that anytime you type a certain command into text chat.
Good. There we go. It's public. I mean, the only thing I can do is try to abduct people and force them to watch the streams. But I think with that, let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any other news. People are getting hyped for Doom Eternal. I don't know, the more I see of Doom Eternal, the more I'm not liking the direction it's going. I wonder if anyone else is feeling the same way.
I felt the same way when I looked at the bottom of every one of those ads and seen Bethesda's name on there, and it's like, yep, not gonna be getting that one. It's like, if Bethesda's involved in some kind of way, I'm not going to be involved in some kind of way.
Was Bethesda involved with Doom 2016 or no?
I think they've always been. I think they've been publisher for Doom for a while, but like Bethesda is different now than what they used to be. And people are like saying, "Oh, they're different branches." Yeah, but they're both Bethesda, and they're Bethesda published both Fallout 76, and also handled all the Fallout 76 snafus, as they will with Doom. So they're the same people that you've been talking to this entire time over these controversies. You haven't been talking to the dev team over them. You've been talking to the publishing team over them. So you're going to be dealing with the exact same people in charge of the not the programming, but in charge of the travesties that have happened in chats and the marketing and these $100 DLC subscription packs and stuff like that. You're going to be dealing with those people for Doom. So not the programmers. You won't have to deal with the bugs, but you'll have to deal with everything else. And I was like, yep, nope.
Yeah, I think to Andrew's point, it just feels like it's more I think they're missing the point of the tone that Doom 2016 really nailed. It feels like it's going a little bit too cartoony with it.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to that because I haven't really ever really truly been into Doom. I played it the first one way back when, but never really got into it. But I can see why certain people are.
Yeah,
I just not for me. I don't think so. I didn't notice a change like that.
Yeah, there's a lot more in terms of as Gordo was saying, more arcadey elements on screen, and I think there's always that tough line you have to draw when it comes to the tone of games like this, because you go too funny, too comedic, it kind of robs of its personality. If you go too serious, too grimdark, then it just looks like everything else that's been done before. As a really good example, I've been going through Darksiders Genesis. Now they got press key for it, and one of the things they did in terms of the tone is that they made Wrath kind of play he's very much Deadpool-esque in his conversations. He's the wisecracking, funny man next to War's straight man routine, and it doesn't really feel right with the tone of that universe.
Yeah, if you're going to create a multi-universe kind of game, you kind of need to keep the tone the same, I think.
It'll be like having Deadpool in Dark Souls narrating things all the time.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure somebody already came up with a mod for that one.
Probably.
But let's get to our first topic. We'll see if we can be somewhat, on schedule this week. And let's talk about physics-guided or physics-directed gameplay. This is something that has been a very favorite element of a lot of indie games over the last decade. And
a lot of Josh's rants.
Oh, yes. And when we talk about physics-guided or physics-oriented gameplay, it's important to make the distinction that every video game that is action or player-focused has its own internal set of physics to it. Everything from Mario to Dark Souls to, I don't know, spin tires, you name it. Every game has physics directed to it. But when we talk about physics-guided games, we mean that the physics of the world are constantly being affected or factoring into the motion or movement of the character. So examples would be the End series, I Am Bread, Getting Over It, Octodad as part of the thumbnail, Noita, however it's pronounced, and games along those lines. We played a Teslagrad. There's another one that we played that was physics guided, and I can't remember the name of it. I think we did it for a multiplayer night.
Yeah, the real terms that I've heard to describe these two is one, you have physics. That's the ones you're referring to, right? Those are physics systems. where like Unity physics, you're using Unity physics, Unreal physics, something like that. And the other stuff like you would get in like Mario is simulated physics, to where it's not actually a physics system. You know, there's not anything that's just calculating, you know, trajectories and whatnot like an actual physics system. It's you move down at 2 pixels, you know, if you're not touching the ground, you moved at 2 pixels per second or per frame or whatever. And if you jump, you move up at like, 10 pixels per second for X amount of seconds kind of thing.
Hits X height and then will start to decline. You descend, you go back down. Yeah. And Mario and Sonic are a really good example of the differences. Because, again, as you said, Mario, it is simulated. It is fixed. When I press the X button, Mario will jump at X height or will jump at X ascending speed to X point, then will descend at X speed. With Sonic, the game is constantly monitoring the physics and the momentum that Sonic is going, and that becomes a factor in terms of his momentum and his jump. It was one of the reasons that when you look at a Sonic game, there are inclines and declines in his world, while Mario didn't really have that until Super Mario Bros. 3, I believe. And even
actually, Sonic is still simulated physics kind of thing. They've just put a lot more depth in there. They put a lot more ifs and ands and causes and all this other programming to saying if you have so much speed, you know, you'll add this to this value kind of thing. If you press, you know, for longer or shorter, give it more of a jump kind of thing. If you're going up a ramp kind of thing, calculate it based off of the direction you're, you know, opposite of your feet pushing kind of thing. Like it's still simulated. Where like the ones what we're talking about on actual, you know, physics would be like spin tires.
Oh yes.
Octodad.
N++. I Am Bread.
Probably. I'm not familiar with that one, but I think I've seen it, and I think probably.
Yeah, man. Again, like in these kinds of games, or even again, Getting Over is a really good example of that.
Yeah, that one's definitely regular physics. At least I think it is.
Yeah.
It could be simulated, but I'm pretty sure it's regular.
And with these titles, the physics of the world become a major factor in the gameplay itself. With something like Octodad, you know, that kind of gameplay, it's not meant to be a tight, very responsive game. It's meant to be just chaos going around. The same with something like Getting Over It.
And that's a problem with the physics-based system, is you can't, if you have anything tight in a physics-based one, it's not going to do well. But where the simulated ones, that's where you can have tight platforming, like, you know, Sonic and Mario kind of thing.
And I just saw another really good example, Surgery Simulator, or that game where you're trying to perform surgery on a character, and I think they also put into VR.
I'm not familiar with that one. That does sound like a physics-based one, though.
Yeah. And El Goro hit the nail on the head there with one of the issues I have with physics-based games is that a lot of them is more about the gimmick of, hey, look how weird and wacky our controls are, and it's not really about the gameplay. Something like that, a speaking simulator that we did for the last month's Spotlight would also play into that. That you are moving the tongue around, and like the tongue can just go in all wild, crazy directions. And it gets to this point where, like I said, like a lot of indie developers have made use of physics-based gameplay because it does have that, and especially like when you look, remember we had our conversation about kind of quote-unquote YouTuber bait or foreign with Twitch bait, that a lot of them love those kinds of games because they can get weird and wacky with them.
Yeah, I tell you though, you can make a good physics-based platformer kind of thing. It's a lot harder. The good example of that I have is I forget what the name of it is. It was on the PlayStation 3, I think. Little Big Planet.
Okay.
Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
with the like, yawn-based characters. I'm pretty sure that one was physics-based, and that one had some pretty tight stuff. But like, it wasn't like super super tight kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
still but they didn't put in like these pixel perfect jumps or anything like that in there.
Yeah. And again, the End series has also been really focused on. It's very tight. Like, this is a game where you have to be making multiple micro adjustments per second when you're trying to maneuver around some of those levels. Yeah, and I was just about to get to that. Like, some of those
Siege.
games have gone like very, yeah. Prestige is another really good example of that. Some of them can get very creative along those lines. I don't think I played Human Fall Flat. I think that's
I
maybe one
haven't.
I missed.
Yeah, but Besiege is definitely one of the physics-based ones.
Yeah, and even something like Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts.
I think that one's simulated, if I
Okay.
remember right.
Yeah.
They've
So,
just put more detail into it.
mm-hmm,
It seems more. It seems more like it because they put more detail, more precision into it, kind of thing, like they
yeah,
did with Sonic.
mm-hmm. But I think with that said, the issue with these kinds of games is that they can become a very effective. Do you actually? Here's one. Would a Kerbal Space Program be considered simulated or actual physics?
Oh, that's definitely physics.
Yeah.
That is very much physics. I mean, um, that whole game is physics. I mean, that's the game is basically just a physics engine, and here's a firecracker that you put in it. You basically
Yeah.
that's basically the entire game. The entire game is like
Yeah.
so many physics engines layered on top of each other. Like it's physics on top of physics on top of physics on top of
My
physics. It's mind blowing how much physics is in that game.
yeah. My phase is the rock going like this, goes up and then goes right back down and kills everybody. That's all the physics I get to simulate in that. And it's kind of hard, I think, in most cases, to build a compelling game around a physics guided or physics simulated system, like what we talk about with Kerbal Space Program, Besiege, and things like that. And
Yeah, it is hard because like you have to like you really need the right kind of game to really
mhm,
kind of fit it kind of thing. Like like I see like Little Big Planet as kind of like the exception to the rule to
mhm,
where they didn't really have anything super different in there, besides like the building worlds and everything. But like they had like they just did everything so well. I mean, people
mhm.
could technically do that same thing if they were super geniuses on programming, because you're not going to get that level of precision with like Unity physics or Unreal physics. I can tell you that.
I think physics was the buzzword probably before procedural generation. Like at the beginning of the last decade, and probably like to like the midpoint, a lot of developers were kind of chasing that. Again, there were a lot of weird and wacky games that focus on physics as kind of the main force for it. And we don't see too many of that, or at least not as many that focus on kind of that gimmick. Like something like
They still find
Untitled
it.
Goose Game had, there was physics or very light physics, or probably more of the simulated side of how you move objects around, but it was really more about being a whole goose than it was about physics focused puzzles.
Yeah, that one did have physics in it, but it seems to be like really YouTube bait.
Mm-hmm.
Really, Goat Similar. Yeah, Goat Similar was a physics based one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did not like that.
And getting back to what you were saying a minute ago, Shark, regarding why it's difficult to do like high concept games with physics, part of it is that you're kind of giving away part of the control of the character.
Hmm.
And this is one of the reasons why you couldn't do like the same kind of like I've always thought about this. Could Sonic Team make levels as technically deep as like Super Mario in a Sonic situation.
Well, I mean, Sonic is just using simulated, like the same way Mario is.
Mm-hmm.
They just do any more detailed kind of thing. It would. I think what you're more referring to is like Little Big Planet kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can, because I mean, Little Big Planet did exist technically, but the thing is I'm pretty sure they used a custom engine and everything for that
Mm-hmm.
game and built it from the ground up around
I
as close as precision as they could physics
I
in
think,
that world.
and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the N series use their own custom engine, or is that a pre-made one? I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm unsure on that. I've never even heard of the N series.
Now, one thing that we did see as games kind of grew to be more realistic is kind of having, again, like that kind of faux or simulated physics in their games. Like if you remember Amnesia, for instance, you could pick up an object and you could throw it, and you can see the object, move around in real time like that. It has absolutely nothing to do with gameplay at that point, but it's been kind of used as a way of, I guess, trying to make these worlds seem a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, I mean, like 7 Days to Die, I'm unsure if that game uses real physics or simulated physics kind of thing. Because it's really kind of, it's got characteristics of both. I mean, they, I'm sure it's possible. I don't know any instances of this personally, but I'm sure it's possible to combine the two systems, run part simulated physics and part regular, simulated physics, regular physics and simulated physics together,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. But I don't know of any exact examples of that. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it could be possible. I just don't know. I'm not a programmer, so, but I'm thinking that it could be possible, and they could apply like maybe real physics to something like paper blowing through the street, but have everything else be simulated kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like have all your movement and everything simulated, but apply virtual, apply actual physics to like a dust ball ready to the city or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, ragdoll physics have been one of the most popular examples of like physics in games. Yeah. And again, like that's always been that very weird thing about, as Allure says, you can interact with everything in these worlds, but if it doesn't really involve the core gameplay loop, it's not really, a major selling point for it.
Yeah, the only point where you can interact with anything really like gets any kind of selling points for me is when like basically it's a voxel based game like 7 Days to Die, Minecraft, those kind of things, because then you can actually build stuff out of these things you can interact with kind of thing.
And then that leads to more of emergent game design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But for the majority of the games that are simulated physics or physics guided, they don't approach that level of gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, the simulated physics, that's where you get into the precision stuff, like Mario and Sonic and all these really tight feeling games kind of thing, which is most games. Most games run off of this simulated physics kind of thing. And, that is generally the better way to go, where the, actual physics is generally more of a gimmick kind of thing, but could be used good if you know a way to. Like Besiege, like I really liked Besiege until I played it. Like I watched it on YouTube. I was like, that's really awesome. I really got to play it. And then I played it and I was like, okay, not playing this anymore.
Yeah. And that's always been one of the problems for me with a lot of these physics guided games is that they just don't really feel that fun or that enjoyable to play for me. Because, like we said, you lose a lot of the control that you would have normally in a game. Yeah, like eye manipulation and puzzles, that would be a good example of it being used at least a little bit more correctly, as you being able to, manipulate objects, turn them, rotate them, etc., etc. But it's that difference, like for me, in playing a game like Super Meat Boy versus playing something like a Tesla Grad from last night. That in
Yeah.
Super Meat Boy, it uses simulated physics, but it is, as refined and as tight as controls as they could have made it.
Right. For when it comes to real physics games, like the the only game that's coming to my mind that I really enjoyed besides Little Big Planet was the spin tires.
Mm-hmm.
I love me some spin tires. The physics in that are amazing. That was a good use of real physics right there.
Yeah, the racing
And
genre or the sim genre in general has been really good at using realistic physics.
I think Worms was simulated physics, if I remember right, Forward. Kind of like Mario and Sonic and whatnot. But they have a lot more into it because that's what their design is around, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I remember the game Psyops. This was, I think, PlayStation 2 era. That you could use like telekinesis and like grab enemies, throw them, lift an object, then jump on the object, and then move that around, which was pretty nice.
Oh, yeah. Well, I tell you, Breath of the Wild has a lot of regular physics in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's regular physics, not simulated.
Well, when I get knocked by an enemy and start rolling down the hill endlessly.
Or when you use that power to pick up something, or you would pick up a cart, and then you can stand in the cart, and then you can fly across the thing if you're careful enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Half-Life 2, definitely, with the real physics in that for some of its puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think when it's in a controlled setting, real physics tend to work better, at least for me, in terms of the gameplay. But when they're the bulk, or when it's the main gameplay loop, it seems to always cause trouble for me.
Yeah, or if you try to do it in any kind of precision, like precision platforming does not work in any way in real physics.
Mm-hmm.
The closest to ever pull that off was Little Big Planet, which keeps on getting brought up. But they didn't do any really precision jumping, platforming, and that kind of thing. They had more loose platforming and more obstacles coming at you. And oh my God, I gotta get out of the way because there's this big boulder coming rolling behind me, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or something's about to kill me from behind or front, and it's not necessarily about this tight, 1 pixel kind of jumps kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Not like oh Lord, I just thought of something. The most nightmare of all, a physics based Kaizo game. Because unless you got your velocity right and your exact angles right, and you could still make that precision jump at the same time, you would never make a jump. Oh, that would be horrible.
Yeah. And Kaizo, again, I think would be a good example of kind of the opposite of real physics in a game. Because when you're playing a Kaizo game, it is about everything working 100% the same way every time. If you can't do that, it's not a Kaizo game at that point.
Well, I think it would still be a Kaizo game. It would just be a really shit Kaizo game. Because, the physics would still work the same way every time. You would just have to calculate your speed and your trajectory on top of when you jump and how you jump and to where you jump, kind of thing. So it would be like several more factors on top of the factors you're already keeping up with, and the slightest twist, slightest timing change, the slightest anything would throw everything off.
Yep. And this is why it becomes, like, for me, very frustrating to play games that are real physics oriented, or have that greater focus of physics, because I can do that jump properly, but maybe my character, is slightly too slow, or maybe the physics affected things. Like when we were playing Tesla Grad last night, like there are cases where I go to change polarity, and it's not affecting things because the physics aren't being affected fast enough, or it's being affected too fast before I could course correct, and I die. And
Mm-hmm.
it becomes that case of I know what to do, but the rules or the physics of the game are preventing me from accomplishing that. And it's one of the things that make getting over it very frustrating.
Yeah, I think most of the physics based ones are really kind of misused. I don't think Tesla Grad should have been really physics based kind of thing. You know, I mean, I don't think a lot of these games should have been really physics based. I mean, but there are some that pull it off, but most of them are not platformers that pull them off. The only platformer I know that's pulled it off is, again, back to Little Big Planet. But most of them, they had so many custom work in it. Just, let's pretend like Little Big Planet doesn't exist for a moment, because it was completely custom, tons of work into it. You don't want to make a platformer with physics, because that's like the one exception, and that exception only exists because of so much epic tons of work that I'm pretty sure none of you are going to ever, make your own completely custom game engine and physics engine before you even build your game. Spend like, I don't know, 10 years developing the engine before you, in the physics engine, before you even start developing the game kind of thing. Like, that's not in the realm of feasibility, for anybody besides like AAA, basically. So, and anybody AAA should probably not be listening to most of the things we say,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. But like,
Let's see. Well, what we're talking about, to Andrew's point, is that, like we said, every game has its own internal physics engine, its own internal rules for how things move around. But
mm-hmm,
the difference between simulated physics and kind of like a real physics, or like I use like a physics guided system, is that with a simulated system, it is kind of hard coded that the characters do not get influenced by like anything outside of their own, hard coded rules or their hard coded numbers.
yeah,
Go ahead.
they can, depending on the game, they can affect stuff that can be in there.
Like picking up a box and throwing it, and the box, moves in real time, or is physics guided, or realistic physics there.
Well, not like that. Like, what I would be more referring to is like Sonic. Like, when you hit one of the bouncy things, it applies a bounce back to you kind of thing. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
provides a opposing force to go the other direction, but that is still like a hard coded simulated physics kind of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
it feels more like a real, like a real physics thing, but it's not. And you can program those kind of things, like, stuff that will knock you back, like a lot of like in like Mega Man, when you get hit by an enemy, you kind of stop and go invisible and get knocked back a few spots and play this whole animation kind of thing. Like, that's still simulated kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you can add more realism to simulated, but it's still like, you get that precision out of simulation,
Mm-hmm.
because everything is predictable, because you may not know how a bouncy thing works before you hit it, but you'll certainly know afterwards kind of thing. And you'll just, once you examine everything, you'll know how everything works 100% of the time, where in real physics kind of thing, things have less predictability, because it's not that everything won't behave the same. Everything will still behave the same. It's just, if you're slightly at a different angle, if you're slightly, running faster or slower kind of thing, if you're any kind of increment, if you're not exactly precision bot doing the exact same thing,
Mm-hmm.
you will get a different result, because the physics is math calculating out. And if you're pointing at the thing at angle 90.00002 kind of thing versus
0.0001.
89.99999,
Yeah.
you're going to possibly bounce off into a spike on one side and then bounce to the victory goal on the other side kind of thing.
Kind of like when you're playing like golf games and you're able to like just like slightly change where you're hitting the ball.
A lot of golf games are physics based.
Yeah. Trying was, I think, a really interesting case because on one hand it featured some very challenging elements to it, but I think that's another really interesting point. Like for games that use realistic physics, they are very easy if you know what you're doing to break those games. Again, there's a getting over speed run that's, I think, it's 30 seconds long of somebody just manipulating that.
Jeez. And see, that's the problem with real physics engines is because, like, I don't know what they did in that playthrough, but I'm assuming they found like some kind of glitch or something in the actual physics system that allowed them to somehow just teleport or fly really, really high or something and just bypass most of the map kind of thing because something in that physics engine was not programmed right. And I believe that used like either Unreal or Unity physics kind of thing, and see that gets back to the problem with what I said about let's pretend that little big planet doesn't exist, because unless you're coding your own physics engine, you're going to have, and you're using like a Unity physics or you're using Unreal physics kind of thing, you're going to have stuff like this already set up to be glitchy in your game, and you're going to by doing that you're going to be taking in all the bugs and glitches and everything that are of that engine kind of thing. Yeah. And, Unreal has their own set of bugs and issues, and, Unity has their own set. I don't know the specifics behind them, but no system is ever perfect. So there's undoubtedly bugs in both of them.
Yeah. And that was like the thing about like with Trine. And again, like whenever we have kind of realistic physics in a platform or an action-based game, the characters never feel as responsive compared to games that make use of simulated physics. And again, it's because of the fact that there's a lot more forces at work, or a lot more things being extrapolated in terms of affecting that character's momentum. Like, I think you guys remember when we played Trine on stream, I think this was like a few months ago. Like, there are cases where it's kind of like, okay, I gotta stack these boxes, I gotta make a platform. Oh no, it's slightly off, so the whole thing, falls over. I'm trying to, like, jump on top of a board that's falling down to hopefully get enough momentum to clear a gap.
Yeah. And the thing is, with a lot of real physics-based, games, like, you have literally a startup time. Like
yes.
you won't just push the arrow over and then you'll start running. You'll push the arrow over and you'll start running at 1 mile an hour and then 5 miles an hour and then 10 miles an hour, 20, 30,
to wherever the stop point is, essentially.
Yeah, you'll just slowly get faster and faster until you reach your max speed in a lot of them, kind of thing. And it's the same every time. Those numbers are not changing. It's just the slightest change in your controller by like faster than you can blink, kind of thing. Smaller than your smaller than like probably 100 times the thinness of your fingernail, kind of thing. Like just the slightest bit of changes just completely can change where you jump, where you land, how things work in the game. It has all the variability, though.
Yeah. And that also makes, if your controller has dead zone issues, a nightmare to play any kind of physics, realistic physics game, too. And it reminds me of this platformer that I played, that the whole point, I forget the name of it, was that you shoot yourself, and then the physics push your character in the opposite direction. Or if you remember that game, what was it? Thrusty Ship? that we
Yeah.
played. Like again, like the problem is that with these kinds of games is that you can do the exact same thing, at least according to your hands. But if your controller is a little bit off, or you move your mouse just slightly to the left or slightly to the right, it completely screws everything up. And if you're being challenged to do something at a specific time, it becomes a nightmare to play.
Yeah.
Wasn't No Time to Explain. This was you're playing a robot, and it was like one analog stick to move, one analog stick to fire. I don't think I ever played. I may have played it on stream once, but this would have been at least like 3-4 years ago.
To what Andrew said, it's not the game that has its own physics, kind of thing. It's the engine that you use.
Mm-hmm.
You're using the physics from the engine, kind of thing, to control your thing. So you're using it from Unity or Unreal or whatever file library you're getting your stuff from is where you're getting it. Now then you can build a custom engine, build your custom physics engine and stuff, and that's what they did in, again, back to Little Big Planet. But that stuff is really out of scope, kind of thing, and so you're dealing with stuff other people have built, stuff Unity's built, stuff that's Unreal has built,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't get you don't have so much control over how things are working, kind of thing. You got to let things go, kind of thing, because it's their physics engine, kind of thing. They basically have control over things. You can only design your levels around that kind of thing, or design your game around that kind of thing. And I mean, there's good examples, but none of them that use kind of default engines, kind of thing, are good as like precision platformers or any kind of like really tight kind of controlled kind of thing, because there's not tight controls in these kind of physics engines. Even in custom made ones, there's not tight ones.
Another example, the Sniper Elite games. We play, of course, Zombie War 4. They use a realistic physics engine for bullets as well, for bullet calculations.
Yeah, I don't know that one, but it sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bullet time.
Yeah, I remember bullet time. I think bullet time was physics based. I can't remember though. I don't actually know. Rather, It could be simulated, but like it's probably physics based. But I don't actually know.
Yeah. And again, like when we see like realistic physics used in like very smart ways, it can definitely add to a game. But when you're forced to kind of fight the physics in order to complete an objective or do something, that to me becomes frustrating. Again, it's that case of I know what I have to do, but the game is kind of refusing to let me get through it.
Yeah. In any physics-based system, you're going to have to fight the physics. The question is does the gameplay suffer from that, or does it gain from that? In like a platformer, I would say it suffers from that.
Mm-hmm.
In a game like Spin Tires or Kerbal Space Program, I think it benefits from that. A racing game would benefit from that.
Or like any game that is trying to go for like emergent gameplay. When you're trying to like move resources around, the Minecraft example, 7 Days to Die, or even something like even a more advanced version of Factorio. Like if you could do something where, I know, I just remembered the game, that title of Factory Town that I played on stream a few months ago. That game uses real physics or realistic physics to dictate how objects move up and down inclines and declines. So you can set up objects to kind of move by using gravity to kind of direct it around instead of having to build things directly.
Are you doing real physics or are you doing simulated physics, Dream? Like, are you doing like like something like Sonic would be similar to physics. Like your character, you hit jump and your character moves up by so many pixels over a certain amount of time, and then it moves down by so many pixels every, so often, kind of thing, per frame or whatever. Where a actual physics thing would be like if you just plugged in Unity physics engines and said, "Hey, let's go," kind of thing.
Another one would be stuff like Planet Coaster, like the theme park, Roller Coaster Tycoon kind of games, where you can actually simulate, the car moving up and around, or for me, the car hits a track, goes flying off, and kills 37 people.
It's a mix. So there we go. We have official confirmation that you can mix them. I figured you could mix them, but never actually knew.
Yeah.
So you can mix them. So his is a mix like Angry Birds.
Yeah. And
could work depending on how well you execute on it. But like just physics alone in a platformer, not going to be good.
Mm-hmm. And I think going back to something like with Tesla Grad, which is more puzzle oriented as well, that you have to be really careful if the player knows a solution, the physics are against them, or the physics are working but they don't know the solution. It can get very tricky to kind of figure out what is going on. Well, one of my favorite, I think we've all ran into this kind of puzzle, push a giant ball or orb around, and the orb is, moving with its own physics. So it's like constantly fighting you as you're trying to push it to where you want it to go.
Yeah.
Or my favorite, when you get the power to do like that super push, so you super push it, instead of going into the hole, you give it too much force, so it bounces out and it goes like flying in some other direction, and is now further away than you were originally at.
Yeah. I tell you another good physics game, and El Gordo's going to like this one, pinball machines. Pinball machines are a good one to run a physics engine in.
Oh, don't get me started with the whole pinball arcade versus pinball FX discussion there. That could be a rant we could save for another time, talking about those two.
You might have to make a video on that one.
I should play a Twilight Zone again on stream.
Yeah.
And again, like, physics, like, when they are a focus, you need to be really careful, again, just how much it's going to affect things. Oh, I think Rio and I are going to have a fight. We'll have a metaphorical fight there, because I like the pinball arcade.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Well, we'll just tell you to get good, Josh.
There we go. But I think that's all I have to say, at least for now. Do you have anything to wrap up this topic on?
That your physics, whatever kind of physics you go with, whether it's simulated or physics, it needs to be fitting for your game, kind of thing. Like if you're going for a precision platforming, make sure you have precision, kind of thing. And the only way to do that is simulated. Where if you're going for more freeform kind of thing, where it's not precision based, meaning that there's other things to worry about besides actual platforming. Like in Mega Man, Mega Man's not, Mega Man is a precision, but Mega Man has all the enemies kind of thing, that are trying to stop you specifically in all different kinds. But that's probably more of a bad sample. Let's go back to the game of the day, Little Big Planet. They can have a physics-based boulder rolling down behind you, Indiana Jones style, and you're sitting there running to get out of the way, kind of thing, and ducking into a hole, and hopefully the giant boulder does not hit you. Or any number of could be like a whole wash of water just coming behind you kind of thing, and you're trying to escape before the water comes in there. So the whole challenge isn't just that it's like a normal platformer where you're focusing on the precision, where this is you're probably trying to get away from something or someone or something kind of thing, and you're having a platform in the process of doing it, and it's not precision based kind of thing. You don't have like these pencil perfect jumps. You have these smaller jumps that you could well overshoot kind of thing. But the real threat isn't the platforming. It's getting away or like beating somebody in a race or something like that. It's competing against something, somebody kind of thing in order to get ahead kind of thing rather than specifically trying to make this jump kind of thing. It makes the platforming easier. You got to make the platforming easier, or else you're not going to be able to make it on the regularly on the physics space.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to cut down that precision that you got to make in your level design and up the challenge in other ways, kind of thing.
All right, so I think with that, let us get to what weird games are coming out, and then we'll talk briefly about kind of choosing the right peripheral for your game, because I don't think that's going to be too long of a conversation, but we've said that before.
You've cursed us now. Now it's going to be really long.
There we go. Let's see what we got here. Oh, a game called Introvert.
I still got to get you a layout for this.
Oh, it's what the heck's a kinetic visual novel?
Is that when they use this Kinect? You have to like stand in front of the Kinect camera and like swipe your hands forward to make it change pages.
Does it use physics?
Probably.
The physics guided visual novel game. There we go.
Physics-based guided visual novel with using the Kinect.
Mm-hmm.
If you push too far, you'll go 2 pages back, and then you'll have to come back. Or if you don't push enough, you might end up in the middle of like 2 pages, kind of thing.
What the heck is this? A stone?
That might get too real dream.
What the heck are these images? Free classic fantasy MMO. With no option to subscribe or donate, okay?
Well, at least in their main features, there's no options.
Rainbow Run. Adore. What's this?
Maybe something we'll adore.
Monster Taming Action Roguelite.
So, Pokemon Roguelite?
I guess so. Graphics aren't... It looks like, again, like very basic 3D.
Yeah. I think the problem isn't the 3D of it. I think it's the problem with their textures, like the colors being like dull kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the game would have looked a lot better if they had a different palette of colors that they use, kind of thing. Like, I don't think it's the actual art or anything that's bad. I think it's just the palette looks generic and bland, kind of thing.
It looks like it's not really like Pokemon-esque. I guess each creature must be its own attack, and I assume it must be like you may be able to assign like 2 to 4 creatures to buttons, and you can just like hit each button as you're fighting. Then there's probably a cooldown period.
So it's a pretty normal game.
I'll put in for it.
Like, look at that grass and the dirt beside it in that
Yeah.
little animated thing. Like, you can see it's like that's just dull looking. It's like
It doesn't have like an aesthetic to it.
Yeah, it's missing aesthetics. It has the color palette. Like, I think it has aesthetics in other areas, but it does not have it in the color department.
Guns of, I can't say that word because I'll be flagged by YouTube.
You can't say bull?
It's the other word after that. That's the trouble.
What other word? I don't see other word.
Oh, a game called Crash the Game. I think that's a game for me.
Oh, that's a game for Josh. That is
Wait,
a game for Josh.
it's a gambling
Yeah,
game.
I think so too, chat.
Oh, how? Eh. Shadows of Larth? And hey, Chow. Looks like another one. There's not really like an aesthetic to the game.
Yeah, they went more with a bland, realistic. Everything's gray
I
and
like
brown.
the screen of the guy just like staying like perfectly still, straight up.
Yeah,
Let's see. Looks like they're trying to copy Dark Souls a little bit.
yeah. This is just bland, gray and brown. Like everything's gray and brown.
Your left hand will not stand idle while you fight.
What?
What?
That that sounds really bad.
I don't know what that means.
I
Oh,
don't
you
know.
get.
Maybe you'll be too bored with the game and have to do something else.
Uh huh. Wait, you can fight in three styles: normal, power, and explosive. Why would you not want to be an explosive?
Yeah, be the maybe that's the when you're bored of the game and you're doing something else
Mm-hmm.
with your other hand.
I
Maybe
keep
that's the explosive one.
I keep getting emails wanting me to try out that game Wanking Simulator.
Oh, jeez,
I bet I just summoned Draken with that one.
you might have.
Ooh, Sea Fishing Simulator. Ooh, Thief Simulator. There's a lot of simulators going on. Romance Christmas, a furry detective game? Spell check was not used here. Let's see. Blood of Steel. Please tell me it's a battle royale.
Detective.
It's like a platformer.
Yeah, it's like a platformer. You still gotta play your first platformer.
Mm-hmm. What the hell?
It does exist. Well, I'm pretty sure it does. I know the YouTube simulator does. I'm pretty sure there's a streaming simulator too.
Oh no. Reach. Is this a horror game?
I'm still waiting on the simulator.
Mm-mm.
Although that may already exist too, and I
You
just
like
don't know about
these graphics?
it. Yeah.
Mystical horror in 2D.
So
Counter.
definitely a good use of like 4 colors and
What's
no
with-
shades in between.
Did somebody hear about something about simulations this week? We're getting all these simulator games.
I don't know. I think Mechanic Simulator could be interesting.
Let's see. Oh, it's from the same guys who did Car Mechanic Simulator and those.
Ah, then it very likely is something of value.
Oh, my voice is going now already.
Yeah, there is those, Oscar. There is those.
I'm afraid. What is it? Yeah, I actually saw one of those. There's a game from on GOG that's about managing your own porn empire. This was made in 1997.
Hmm.
Ooh. That actually looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I have a feeling it will because like Car Mechanic Simulator was such a good game. Kind of thing. I played so many hours of that.
This is one of those games that, again, like, it's definitely not for everybody, but if you enjoy it, I think you're going to have a lot of time in this one.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's the right game for me, though.
I don't know. You need to try their first game if you have.
Car Mechanic Simulator?
Uh-huh. Because it is quite good. Like you don't have to be a mechanic or anything to enjoy it, kind of thing. Like it is,
Here's
and
a
it'll
game.
teach you some stuff.
Yeah. How do you like it, Elon Musk?
So we found it. We found a game for Elon. 'Cause, like, 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 we found a game for Elon now.
Mm-hmm. Somebody here needs to make a video game and be like, Josh, you need to get good at this. Just like have the title be as antagonistic as possible.
Yeah. You know what else we need to do is every one of you need to tweet out this video to Elon Musk now.
Mm-hmm.
Now that he's been in there.
Mm-hmm. The heck?
Look at the Elon memes.
Okay then. And some very weird games here. Me and My
Yeah.
Cat's Castle. Oh. This is hurting my eyes a little bit. Oh.
I got another one for you. What is a roguelike? For Josh. Get good edition.
Safe Home is a fancy mix. Yeah, we have a fancy game. Time management strategy, hidden object clicker shooter, and tower defense. I'm sure this game is very focused, and it's a visual novel game. Wait a minute. Hey, I'm confused here.
Is it also a platformer?
Could be a dating game too.
What about a physics game?
Okay then. And it's an indie game. In case you
So
didn't
it's
guess
indie
that.
genre.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We gotta have our indie genre rant one day.
Lumot? 3D puzzle platformer with vivid visuals and quirky characters. When you announce Project Tri, remember you gotta say every character in your game is quirky.
Oh yeah, like they're all quirky. They're like they went to the My Hero Academia universe.
Oh no!
All of them got quirks. All of them. They all like some of them like look like lizards. Some of them can hit really hard. Some of them have long tongues. All that kind of stuff. They all have their own quirks.
Good. Isn't just Death Stranding the Norman Reedus dating simulator though?
I think so.
This one, I think the aesthetics look pretty interesting.
Yeah, the aesthetics is
Very
definitely...
bright colors. I mean, they got that one down.
Mm-hmm. And very contrasty and very you can tell what's going on based on the colors because you can see the dark areas and okay, that's platforms or something. That's where you can walk and everything. And like all these bright colored things, those are things that can maybe danger you, maybe do certain things, certain actions or whatnot. This looks like a very generic version of Hearthstone.
Yeah. Wait, isn't it a UPS simulator, Death Stranding? Wait.
That too.
Each level is procedurally generated. Okay. Building your deck is tricky. Okay. Skill tree, risk reward. It's possible. Wait. Be prepared treasures to be part of your deck, and as you know, it's impossible to kill zombies with gold. Well, can't you just make gold bullets and shoot them with it? 3 unique warriors, 9 bosses, and a mega uber final boss. I think somebody's been watching our streams there.
Yeah. This graphics just look like a very generic version of Hearthstone, though.
Yeah, like if you look at when the cards do damage, that looks like the exact same style that they do in Hearthstone, right? That the number flies up.
Yeah, I do too, child. I do too. I smell it from over here.
Mm-hmm. Scrapper Gauntlet. Why does that sound familiar? Oh wait, it's a VR. What? Deep.
Of course, I smell a lot of that in the weird game segment.
Mm-hmm. Curse of Annabelle. Why am I afraid to click on this? Annabelle dies. Emily learns about the Dark Pass. It's a new take on adventure horror, not horror adventure.
What about action adventure? Does that mean it's Call of Duty?
And wait, isn't Call of Duty an RPG? Didn't it get nominated for that?
I think it was action adventure. Would it would give
Uh,
nominated for?
Colt.
Maybe it's a horror action adventure.
I was not expecting this. With your own limbs. Nice.
It already has a very mobile feel to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, you can get the How Do You Like It Elon Musk Edition upgrade. When you need to add the Josh upgrade, too.
Oh yeah.
Wait, Train Sim World, Canadian National Oakville Subdivision, Hamilton Oakville Route add-on. Whew.
Is that 10 times fast?
I can't say it one time. Humanity. What? This story rich and atmospheric game poses many questions about what makes life worth living while you run around shooting things. Oh, and you have survive on your arm. That's deep.
Making a Josh proof game? You mean a game Josh can't break?
I think that's impossible.
No, I achieved it. You couldn't break it.
We'll see.
You
Alright,
couldn't break
Chow.
our last one.
Have a good night. Mask of Sanity.
See you, Chow.
Variety of puzzles. Wait. The possibility to not only escape from enemies, but also to kill them. Oh, the presence of firearms and knives. Doesn't mean you can use them, they're just there.
Yeah, so like if you call out their name, they just raise up their hand, present.
Mm-hmm. Mental. Sub Chase Online.
Was that one game called Mental or Menial?
Mental.
Mental.
Uses VR. You can parkour in VR.
Was it physics based? It's probably physics based.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I tell you, a good use of a physics based platformer actually was that one game, Mirror's Edge.
Oh.
At least I think that was physics based.
I don't know. I think this was a game Agordo was telling me about.
I could be wrong on that.
Despite being black and white, there's some pretty good detail to the backgrounds.
Yeah, that's actually a test that I've come up with recently. If you take whatever image of your game is, and you convert it to monochrome, black and white kind of thing, and all the grays in between. If it still looks good, then you probably got a good aesthetic kind of thing. If it does not, then you need to do some work.
She doesn't have a face. That's not a good sign.
Or maybe it is.
Dun dun dun. Alright, we'll see if we get that one. Bloody Rally Show. Witch College 2. Tesla Force.
I'm sure it's not a 100% test, but I think it is a test to at least know that you're on the right path kind of thing.
Oh, look. Endless replayable roguelite. I don't think those words go together. And you can play.
Oh, it does when you have everything procedurally generated. Right? Or just random generated. Don't even procedurally generate it. Just make it all completely random.
That is a horrible GIF right there.
Mm-hmm.
World's procedurally generated. So it's a top-down shooter. Looks like 4-player. It's not from 10. It is from 10 Ton Games. I was wondering, didn't somebody just steal this? Steal this idea from Nikolai versus Lovecraft? Or Tesla versus Lovecraft?
How did that game do?
Wasn't that bad. Well, if it's 10 tons, it means it's going to at least be a really good top-down shooter. Wait, aren't they working on a survival zombie game as well? I was not expecting to see that one. Bob wants to go home. Oh, there's already a corona. Oh, wait, we already looked at a coronavirus simulator last week.
Yeah, a few of them, I think.
What the hell? Bob is distressed, which has caused him to move at random? What does that mean?
It might be a physics-based game.
Or a game where just the character moves randomly no matter what you push.
That now I've got it. Yo, Chow, if you're watching this and recorded, or if you're still here by some chance, when you're making that Josh Proof game, make sure that at random points that just all of a sudden the controller just the controls just automatically push some kind of direction or push some kind of button kind of thing at random.
And this is the next game from the guys who did I forget the name of the game. Been There, Time That, or something like that. Been There, Dan That. It's kind of like a very dry humor, crazy adventure game. What?
Exactly, El Gordo.
I'll put in for it. One part adventure game, one part indie platformer.
Is it indie genre though?
Probably. We're not clicking on this one. I learned that lesson 2 weeks ago.
Do I need to dare you on
it? Forest monster. The player is in a forest of monsters. What about a monster of forests?
How about a monstrous of forests?
What? Wait, what?
Ryu wants you to click it.
I don't know what this game is, but just by reading the description. Okay. 2D.
Feature, get money to buy upgrades.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like a platformer to me.
Mm-hmm. Duskmark demo? Alright, one more page and then we'll move on to our final topic. Just want to see. And looks like an RPG Maker game right here.
Oh yeah, that looks definitely like an RPG Maker game.
Mm-hmm.
The UI, the graphics. Oh yeah, those are definitely. I've seen some stock graphics in there from.
Here's the game for Draken: Anime Girls Loot Box Simulator.
Oh snap!
Combining anime girls and loot boxes together.
Could be interesting. Should request a key for it.
Mm-hmm.
You play it on stream. Now this looks interesting, but I mean the aesthetics is definitely fell on it, kind of thing. But like, this is looking like could be interesting as of gameplay wise.
Let's see.
Just from the first look of it.
I'm just wondering how much it's going to cost.
Probably not much. I think it'd be worth trying to get a key for it. You'll probably, I could almost guarantee you get the key for it.
I don't know. I didn't get a key for that other game, the Ninja and Shuriken one. Ooh.
I mean, it could be something you spend like 5 minutes on, and then we go to the next thing.
Yeah. Furry Stories Alpha Male. We're not clicking on that one either.
Oh, come on. We got to click on that one.
Ooh, The Dawn of Art. What?
Where's the sequel of that? The Sunrise of Art?
Narrated by Daisy Ridley.
Do you know who that is?
Isn't that the one from Star Wars?
No clue.
Nope. How's that an adventure game? This is all coming out within the next week, too. Money.
Polydolls.
Silent. Ooh, Rune Factory 4? Really? I thought they stopped making the Rune Factory games.
There you go, Dream. The midday of art.
I doubt I'm gonna get it, but I'm gonna put in for it. It's gonna be weird playing a Rune Factory game after playing Stardew Valley.
The high noon of art.
Hay Fever. What? Exorcist and the Unholy Society. I was not expecting that thumbnail. Or that scene.
I expected it to be something completely off. But I did not know which way it was going to go.
Oh, with more quirky, fleshed out characters.
I heard that name and I see that screenshot. I was like, no, that is wrong. That is not going to be what's in behind there. I think we need to start taking bets, to if we think the thumbnail is going to fit the game, kind of thing.
This one looks promising right off the bat.
Yeah,
That's a really good screenshot.
really good aesthetics. Like that sky with that moon glowing,
And the lighting, too.
And those animations there down below, and
Yeah. Let's see.
they got their aesthetics.
Co-op. It sounds kind of like that Kingdom game. That daytime you're going out to do building, nighttime you have to defend your base.
I don't see any kind of building thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It says right here, during the day you have to collect resources, and then at night you have to build defensive structures.
Request a key for that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
I really like the Kingdom games. I really hated buying them, but I really liked because the whole reason behind that was they released basically Alpha 1 of their game for like $10-15, and they released Alpha 2 for their game for like $10-15, and then they released the actual game, full game, for like $15-20. And it's like, it's going to be sequels, make them not just the next Alpha.
What the heck is this? Synthetic Blood Mineship is a futuristic action platform with a deep storyline and fascinating binding of mechanics of death and dialogues. I don't know how that works. Dynamic combat system. Okay. The prime mechanics of the battle will not make you bored.
Here's a question for you, Josh. Do you think they're cheating when a developer uses stuff like, dynamic combat system? Like, it's telling you nothing about the combat system. They're just using flashy words, and it could be not... It could just be a regular combat system or not. What do you think about that? What do you think about the word usage here?
Yeah, it doesn't tell me anything about what the combat is. Or infinite replayability.
Yeah, which is always a lie. Unless it's crap. And then it's still pretty much a lie. It's just more true than the ones that are non-crap. Because they have better generation.
Well, at least we got a few interesting games this week. But let's get to our final topic then. And that's about choosing the right peripheral for your game. This is something that has become, I think, a lot more harder for people to think about over the last decade. The previous decade, the early thousands, it was still very much, PC and consoles were split in terms of what games appeared on it. But as games became more standardized and UIs, it's become a lot easier to port games from keyboard... Oh, my voice is really dying on. Whoa, my voice really is dying here. But before my voice goes, it's gotten a lot easier to bring games from console to PC and vice versa. But it also raises a question about what peripheral should you focus on for your game. So I have my own little mini rant here, but I'm going to turn it to you first, Shark. When you're playing a game, like if a game gives you both keyboard and mouse and gamepad, what do you choose?
Well, it depends on the genre, kind of thing. Like, and it's not entirely on the genre, but the genre is kind of like a baseline to what I'll pick. Like, like if it's got any kind of shooter mechanics in it, like where you're aiming or anything, keyboard and a mouse is a must.
Mm-hmm.
Thing like 7 Days to Die, stuff like that. Keyboard and mouse is a must. If it's a racing game, I can't use no keyboard and mouse. Like that's crap. That is absolute crap. It's either a steering wheel, which would be the most preferred way, or secondary a analog and an analog only gamepad. Like don't give me any of this digital stuff. Like I don't want using no D-pad to control a car. Oh, that's horrible. That's the same as using a keyboard. Like no. Need the analog. You need some kind of analog control. You need the either an analog stick on your controller or a analog based steering wheel kind of thing. Let's see here. What's some examples of some other games? Like an RPG. An RPG can really go either any way kind of thing. Like I could go keyboard and mouse. I could go controller kind of thing. Like it really depends on really kind of how they do their controls in that particular game to which one I like better kind of thing. And since I'm primarily on using my PC, I would prefer not to switch to the controller if I can help it, because I got to put the batteries in there. It's a little bit extra prep work. So if I would prefer to use the controller, the keyboard and mouse when possible. When it's kind of expected, but like a beat 'em up, definitely would rather have a controller on that. Absolutely. And there's many other examples we could go through, but like it really depends. The genre is kind of the baseline, and like there has been a few games that have kind of like stepped out of that kind of genre based thing and whatnot, but like like a platformer, I would want a controller for a platformer. I would not want to do keyboard and mouse. No way for a platformer. But there are exceptions to that rule, kind of thing. But like it all depends on the game. But the first factor, the main factor, is the genre.
Yeah, and I think for me, hopefully, hold on. Yeah, I think for me, it has to do with what am I primarily doing in the game. If it's a focus on combat and aiming, then it's keyboard and mouse all the way. Like, I cannot play third or first person shooter with a gamepad anymore. Like, it just doesn't work.
What about beat 'em up?
What was that?
What about beat 'em up? Beat 'em up is based on combat.
I think beat 'em up, I use a gamepad because there's still, I think the primary element is going to be moving around, and it's more about button pressing rather than aiming. Like, you're not really aiming in a beat 'em up. But when you're trying to do like headshots and stuff like that, like if you remember last year when we played Remnant from the Ashes, I would not be able to play that game on a gamepad. No way I could be in that game. We even gotten close, I think, unless I played it on easy.
Yeah, I tell you one kind of exception that I would make, like on a racing game. Like I would use a keyboard and mouse potentially on a racing game if they had the steering on the mouse, kind of thing. Because when you're steering the car, you need that analog back and forth, and you can get that on a mouse, but you in an analog stick on your controller, and an analog steering wheel. You need an analog device in order to get that precision steering, because you don't want to just like if you're driving a car in real life, you don't all of a sudden turn the wheel to one lock on one side, one lock on the other side.
Wheels don't turn that way. Yeah. And I think another big thing is about the granularity of the analog stick. And I've used this example. Works.
I think your mic dying again.
Test. Am I still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I need to be doing something about that soon then. But with something like the analog stick, as I'm turning it very, very slightly, that is creating different degrees of that motion. You can't do that with a keyboard and mouse, and why I find a lot of platformers harder to play. Because, if I'm there's not really a sense you can tap a keyboard in the same way as you can move an analog stick.
Yeah, it's analog controls versus digital for a lot of that kind of thing, and I mean, maybe one day they'll actually, I think they already do, have like some keyboards, specialty keyboards out there that have like analog features in the WASD. And maybe if I had a special keyboard like that, maybe, and I could just hit a button and turn on the analog for those buttons kind of thing, maybe a racing game might be good on the keyboard, kind of thing, where I could analog, control my turning through those two kind of things. But that said, I'm used to just pushing them, so
yeah, it's gonna be
that may
weird,
cause some weirdness. Yeah.
And I think another challenge is that when you're trying to manipulate, and I think going to Aurora's point, if I'm playing an action game, one of the big things for me is that it's easier to manipulate a character with an analog stick with basically with my thumb versus 3 keys with a WSAD kind of thing. And this, I think, one of the things for me, I'm going to throw this to you, Sean, to everybody watching. For me these days, I've become a very big stickler for control schemes and control peripherals in general. Meaning that I don't care how great your game is. If I want to play your game with a keyboard and gamepad's the only option, or if I want to play with gamepad and keyboard's the only option, I'm not playing your game at all, kind of thing. If I can't get the control scheme how I want it, forget playing your game.
Yeah. I'm not really, super into it kind of thing, but I will tell you, if you really bad layout, what was that one game, Stained or whatever, I could not get into that. I wanted to get into that. I so badly wanted to get into it. The controls, they just did not work for me. They were, every time I tried to do something, it would, I would hit the wrong thing and it would do it wrong. My brain is telling me, hey, jump this way and do this. And I do it, but their controls is oh, this doesn't work like that, and then I die, and it's oh. And after so many deaths like that, it's
when you're
I'm done.
Yeah, if you die because you hit the wrong button because of how things feel in your hands or the controls just feel comfortable, that to me is a killer. And I think us lefties are even more particular about this stuff. If you remember when we played Stone Shard this past week, that I had to reorient the major controls to a left-hander. If I didn't do that, that game would have been refunded in 3 minutes. If that game did not have control rebinding, done. That would have been it.
Oh, you remember the old 2-player games on the keyboard where you would use WASD and the arrow keys, and then the other person would use the number keys, and then your shift and control over on the other side, so they had to either sit in your lap or wrap their arms around you to play.
Yeah, or bonus points when you had to have 4 players. You remember Bomberman for the PC had 4 to 8 player controls. How do you get 8 people to play on a keyboard?
On a single keyboard.
There's a challenge. We were talking earlier about innovative co-op games. There you go.
Yeah.
Just put 20 people on a single keyboard and make a co-op game around that.
There we go. Everybody gets 3 buttons.
Yeah. And of course everybody's hands have to fit on it as well.
Yeah, and everybody still has to kind of look at the monitor kind of thing. So everybody's in a circle around the keyboard, and everybody on the backside is breaking their neck looking at the monitor.
I
We're
think that,
looking in a mirror back on the other side of the house, reflecting back at the monitor.
I think here's another weird thing for me, that the more commands a game has, like I'm talking about like multiple mechanics and things the player can do, I find that it's more comfortable to play on a gamepad a lot of times than a keyboard. I think just because it becomes easier to associate, I think, the various commands to their button positions compared to a keyboard, whereas like G is the drink a soda button, and I is open a door, and etc.
Well, that's more with how they could set up their controller
Yeah.
schemes because, like, you could easily have it where you use WASD and then you like Diablo right quick down there on like a attack kind of thing and do that kind of thing. Or you could hit the keyboard shortcut of 1 2 3 4 kind of thing to do the same thing. And they had multiple ways of doing that one thing kind of thing. Where like the games you're referring to are locked into certain buttons and they don't let you reconfigure them
Mm-hmm.
or have or not just reconfigure them but have other options like being able to click on them or anything else. And that's probably more of a shortfall with those games specifically rather than being bad on being specifically for better on a gamepad kind of thing. But it is strictly better on a gamepad because
Mm-hmm.
they didn't go into better controls for their control schemes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the advantages of a gamepad, or at least when you're designing a game around, is that you do need to be very mindful when you're designing your UI. Like we've said before, there's a tendency among first-time and developers starting out in the independent space to just
Hold
say,
on a second.
"Oh,
I'll go on. I'll be right back.
okay." Um, there's this tendency among indie and first-time developers to just kind of throw everything they want like onto a keyboard and then just say, let the player make up the control scheme. And that's something that you really want to avoid. Again, when we have these discussions about whether it's gamepad versus keyboard versus anything else, that you still need to think about what your UI is going to be. Now, one of the more interesting things about when we have this talk about peripherals, Sharp mentioned this a few minutes ago about using a steering wheel. Like there are genres that have genre-specific peripherals. The flight sim genre, driving. Anyone remember Steel Battalion, which is like having like a $300 control setup, and you have to like. It's very hard, I think, for developers, or even Guitar Hero as well. It's very risky when you design your own peripheral for a game. Because it kind of, I think, dates the game, or makes it kind of hard to future-proof that game if the only way to play it is to have that specific peripheral in mind.
Oh yeah, when you're locked to peripherals, it's really hard, kind of thing. But like I remember this old game. I don't remember what it was for. I never got to play it, but I seen it, and I loved it. And it was some kind of mech game kind of thing, and it had this elaborate controller that was like, I think it was something like a $200 controller or
Yeah,
something.
that was, I think, Steel Battalion.
Was that what it was?
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh my
Yeah.
lord, that looks so awesome. But if
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know if they made multiple sequels, if they made multiple parts to that game, they used the same controller or not, but I'm sure they did.
Yeah. And that's another problem. If your game is entirely built on peripheral, that kind of locks you in if you try to make a sequel to it. And then you're forcing people to, you have to be a fan not only of the first game, but you also have to buy our extra, $100 to $200 controller.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, something like so, but, and this is like one of the crazy things, like, with these games, if the best way is to play with a peripheral, it can sour you or absolutely ruin the game if you try to play without it. Yep, and Guitar Hero basically led to its own downfall in that regard, as well as with Rock Band. They kept putting out more and more of these kits, and it just became a waste of space. I have like 2 or 3 guitars in my garage and a drum kit that I'm never going to use again, basically.
Yeah, I, I I think that was part of the problem. I think
Hmm.
the bigger problem was that they were pumping them out so fast.
Yeah,
Like they were pumping out like what 2 games a year, 3 games a year. Both of them were.
yeah. And then everybody was trying to do their own thing. If you remember, there was a DJ here when you get your own disc track player, whatever it's called.
Oh, the DJ Hero.
Yeah,
I think the one that did it right between those was I think it was called Rocksmith,
yeah. One of these
where
days, I would
you
love to play Rocksmith.
I have it. I had it on the PS3 until my PS3 broke, and then I picked it up on one Steam sale or something. But that one just uses a cord, a USB cord
Hmm.
that plugs into your computer or your PlayStation 3 or whatever, and the other end plugs into an actual real
Yeah,
electric guitar, like my one right over here that I can almost reach,
yeah.
but I can't reach it.
If anyone wants to buy me an electric guitar, we can play Rocksmith.
Oh, you can get a good one cheap. Well,
Hmm.
in theory, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I picked mine up in a pawn shop for I think it was something like I got this. I got the guitar, a really cheap garbage amp, and a very very long cord, which you technically don't need the amp or the cord thing. Um, but I got all three of them. I think for like 125 bucks or. And then come turn out that this guitar is probably worth like 300, 400, 500 bucks.
There's our new Patreon incentive. Josh learned to play electric guitar and has rock concerts on stream.
Okay, we can both learn together and
Hmm.
we can duo it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I don't know if amiibos would count as a peripheral here. Would you consider
Mm.
them in this category?
No, amiibos are more like physical deal kind of thing.
Like the
That are
toys for life genre, like with the Skylanders. There's another
yeah,
one.
but those are less DLC and more just the game doesn't work without these things.
Yeah.
It's more of a hollow experience, whether than
You,
where
we're failing here. Wait, Josh Punk is going to be a thing now? Really? When did that happen? Oh, Josh Punk as in punk rocker. There, I'm thinking Josh Punk as in post-apocalyptic Josh.
well, we already got the image
Oh, good.
for both. It
But
works both ways.
oh, good. But we are failing because nobody has brought up the ultimate example of a peripheral going a little too far out there: the Power Glove.
Yeah, the Power Glove. I never got to use the Power Glove. I always wanted one as a kid, especially after seeing the ultimate advertisement for it, that one
The
movie with
Wizard.
Fred Savage.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was so much of an advertisement for that thing because,
And Super
like,
Mario Brothers 3. Don't forget that.
yeah, that was not as much. And the other one was that one cartoon where like
Captain
it had
N.
Mega Man, it had Kid
Captain
Icarus.
N and the Game Master, I think.
Yeah, that one.
There we go. There you go, Dream. Perfect. That's what we need to do. There we go. I think Elgo is just writing the fan fiction for our visual novel game now.
That's going to be the first fan game we get.
Mm-hmm.
And people have already come up with lots of funny ideas for it.
Mm-hmm. I think I own a Power Glove. I think it's like somewhere hidden here. Haven't seen it in over like 20 years.
I own the Power Pad. Actually, I see it right over there.
Mm.
I
Was
got
that
it
the thing you
close.
put on the ground you like step on?
Yeah.
Never had that. Or here's one. Do you remember Gyromite for the NES? Oh, Rob. That's it. Rob the robot.
Yeah, I remember that. I never had it, though.
Me neither.
I tell you what I love doing. What we had to do basically on the trackpad, the power pad
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. They had this, track and field that came with the trio with on your cartridge. Duck Hunt, Mario, and the track meet thing. Um, you would get on there, you would run your butt off, and you would never be able to win, kind of thing. Not one bit. So what we had to do we had to cheese it, and what we did was we would sit two people on both sides. One person would be running on
Oh
like
no.
the front row, and the other one would be taking their fist and going like this
Oh.
on the bottom, on the back one, as fast as they could. And we had to time it with each other. It would never press at the same time as you trip up. And we could win and progress that way. And another thing we did was like when we do the long jumps, like jump up off of the pad and then jump back on. But if you waited a little bit too long, it would automatically crash you down. It was nothing but cheese. That's the only way you could ever do anything in that game. To cheese it.
Mm-hmm. And this is something I think, like, for indie developers, I don't think they necessarily think about things too much along these lines. Would you assume that most indie devs... oh my god, the memes today. Well, would you assume most indie devs, like, know very early on what peripheral they're going to build their game around?
Maybe some of them. I mean, I know I certainly did not know what I was going to build, our last game around.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'm going to build this game around, which is multiple controls, mainly the mouse kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's for like the PC version. But we're going to have like touch and everything for like when we put it on mobile and everything. But we need to configure the control scheme in such a way that it will work for mobile easy as well as for PC easy.
Yeah. And I also want to point something out. When you're using a keyboard and mouse, like from a UI point of view for developers, do not do it, I think, one or the other. As in, it will be all keyboard and no mouse, or all mouse and no keyboard. Because I always find those controls to be very cumbersome to play.
Yeah. I think it works for some people, but not others.
Yeah.
Like, for our last game, we're bringing that up again. For our last game, what I did was, what we did was we set it up where people could play how they wanted to. The default controller scheme basically was 3 controller schemes built into one. It was a mouse-only controller scheme at the same time as a keyboard-only control scheme, as well as a keyboard and mouse together control scheme kind of thing. And you could use them all together. Oh, we're going to get the word of the day. Chromasia, Ryu. Chromasia. But we set it up to, be 3 different control schemes all at the same time without even configuring, so that ideally, people were going to pick it up and just do whatever felt natural to them, whether it was solely mouse, solely keyboard, or both kind of thing. And just pick it up and go natural with it, because, we were trying to adapt the controller scheme to be like the best of all worlds kind of thing all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And when we adapt the control schemes together and everything and have like 3 in there, we're being very safely extreme in that. There you go, Ryu.
Alright, but I think that is about it. I think I'm all out of topics for this one. Anything else you can think about before we wrap it up for the week?
Well, I mean, we never touched on to more weird controls like breathing into a mic or voice activated or motion control.
Yeah. I think we kind of mentioned that slightly when we talked about stuff like the Steel Battalion and Guitar Hero. There's also stuff if you remember, there's a microphone-based controller pinball game called Odachi for the Wii. And I think motion controls and all these weird controls kind of fall in that same line. You have to be really careful about how much of a focus you put on them. Because if they become uncomfortable to play or you can't find them anymore, you kind of lose entire functionality of your title.
Yeah, I think I think you can use it. I think you have to use it right, and you'll get the right kind of platform. Like mobile would be a good place to put, like, I don't know, like a pinball game where you can like
Mm-hmm.
tilt the pinball by tilting the phone kind of thing, because pretty much every phone has gyro sensors and stuff in it,
Mm-hmm.
and that ain't going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
And you're never going to have an issue with accessible on controls kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think another big thing that we kind of touched on as well, but it also needs to be mentioned. If you're trying to preserve these games, having to collect that very special peripheral also adds to the problem of trying to get, because if the game is rare, you know that peripheral is going to be even rarer.
Yeah. And here's another thing that we definitely did not touch on is vocal controls, because this is
Mm.
not a rare peripheral, and this is something new that's kind of really elevating right now. Like I remember watching a recently to where they had this game where you would tell the system would talk to you and be like, hey, let's say something nice to this tree, and then you would say something, and
Mm.
if they thought you said something bad, they were like, I said say something nice, and then you say something nice to it, and then the tree grows and animates kind of thing.
Oh, I just remembered. I was at I think it was at Drexel or a college. It was like 8, 9 years ago, and they were showing off this device that you would wear on your head, and it would measure your thought pattern, measure basically where brain activity was, and it would do things or would affect what's going on screen. Like if you concentrate really hard, the game would read that to make this rock levitate or things like that.
Hmm. Well, I know there's like some accessibility stuff that they're working on where it actually does fit like a helmet over your head kind of thing that is reading
Mm-hmm.
impulses from your brain kind of thing, and like adapting where you go kind of thing. They're working on that kind of technology right now. They've got it semi working from my understanding kind of thing. It's still, I think it's in beta or something kind of thing. It's past the alpha stage, I believe. But I'm unsure on that, and it looks pretty cool for accessibility options and whatnot. There's other ones that like can like go like for people who lost their hand, like go on the hands thing, and it reads their movements or something somehow in their wrist or something. I don't
Yeah.
understand exactly how it works, but they have like basically little caps or something that will go on the end of your hand, kind of,
Yeah.
or the end of where your hand would be if you had one, kind of.
And I think you just raised a point that could probably fit for another cast, but is something to bring up here about accessibility peripherals, because there are controllers and other things, like you said, that are designed specifically for people who have certain handicaps or disabilities. If you
Mm-hmm.
remember, the Xbox accessibility control that came out last year would be a big example of that. And I think for this discussion, that may be too much of a its own topic to bring up here, though.
I don't know if it would be much of a topic to take on its own, though.
Yeah. But one of the things I think we are seeing, I think Elgato brought this up as well a few minutes ago, is that people are expecting multiple peripherals to be supported when it comes to a game these days. Especially, again, if you're building it for a PC or computer based interface. And it's also something you need to consider when you're porting games over. One of the surefire signs I see when we play a PC game that it's a mobile port is that it's entirely mouse controlled, no keyboard, no hotkeys whatsoever. And you have to again be aware of what people have available, and you have to design your game around it.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look at like Oxygen Not Included.
Mm-hmm.
Oxygen Not Included is almost a mouse exclusive game kind of thing, and it plays well for that. But it does have like keyboard stuff for like shortcuts and this kind of thing, because you're not actually moving any of your characters because they're moving on their own kind of thing. You're just kind of directing them where to go. kind of thing, which is the reason why it's very mouse heavy and stuff. But you can use like keyboard shortcuts to fast forward the time, slow it down, kind of thing. You'll go right to open this sub menu kind of thing to find this item kind of thing and stuff like that. Like they have like all these like shortcuts and everything mapped to the keyboard. So the keyboard isn't completely useless or anything, but you don't have to use it as far as I'm aware of kind of thing. You can play just with the mouse, but like you can play with the keyboard to get yourself more, I guess, accessibility to shortcuts kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we've also seen like developers, or we've seen players maybe mod in custom shortcuts and custom hotkeys for games as well. Um, MMOs are a really big example of this. I've seen like scarily big UIs of like World of Warcraft with custom modded UIs for that game and like the macro commands.
Oh, you just reminded me of something. They you have micro stuff on macro rather on PC. You can buy those separate little macros that will have whatever buttons on them, and they're configurable. You can configure them to work on any button on your PC. So you could technically, even if a game doesn't have rebinding controls, you could technically rebind it to that because you can rebind your actual keyboard to it, kind of thing.
And there's programs as well that I know plenty of people have told me about programs you can download that you can use to mod keyboard commands or mod gamepad controls as well.
I didn't know about those, but I would believe it.
Yeah, Joy to Key emulators. Thank you. But I think with that, let's see. Yeah, we are just over 2 hours, and I think that's a good spot to wrap it up this week. Because this went on a lot longer than I expected.
Yeah, we did.
But we will be back next Sunday around 3:34 p.m. EST. If I did things right, all of Shark's contact information will actually be in both the live and recorded versions of these streams now, using the power of templates there. But if you want to follow me, I am on Twitter at GWBicer. As always, on game-wisdom.com and right here. There's links to our Discord and Patreon link down below. If you like early and ad-free access to a lot of our design talks, be sure to subscribe. And for you, Shark, where can people find you?
Well, in the live and recorded version, we got a link down to the Discord where I'm at pretty much all the time. We got a link to Twitter, which is where I'm posting stuff, updates and stuff on Project Triad. And then we have our YouTube channel, which I should be, as soon as I have time, be making a video and putting that up there on Project Triad as well.
All right. But if you are a developer working on a future game or just like talking about game design, we are always looking for a guest for our live and recorded talks. And with that is going to do it. I will be back later tonight for our regular game streams and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where it's in the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.
And I'll be back in his regular stream to tell him to get good.
All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your night.